There is something your doctor knows, but has probably never told you, not because he is a bad doctor, but because nobody taught him this in medical school. And the reason nobody taught him is straightforward. There is no way to patent a plant, and if you cannot patent something, you cannot build a billion-dollar business around it. That is not a conspiracy, that is just economics. What that means, practically, is that there is an entire body of knowledge sitting outside the system. Knowledge accumulated by thousands of healers over 4,000 years, in India, in China, in Egypt, in Rome, in Persia, in the Amazon rainforest, that was quietly set aside, not because it stopped working, because it was not profitable. Today you are going to hear about 9 of those plants. 9 plants that address knee pain and cartilage damage at a level that most conventional treatments never reach. And before we go any further, I want you to know 2 things. First, there is one plant on this list, a resin used in sacred rituals 3,000 years ago, that was tested in a double-blind clinical trial and produced statistically significant reductions in knee pain in 30 days. 30. Without gastrointestinal side effects, without a prescription. Second, there is another plant on this list, so common that you almost certainly have it in your kitchen right now, that was compared directly to ibuprofen for knee osteoarthritis in a peer-reviewed study. It produced comparable pain relief, with better digestive tolerance. This is not folklore. This is what happens when human observation, accumulated across 100 generations, finally meets a laboratory willing to measure it. Stay with me to the end, because I am also going to give you a practical, week-by-week protocol for introducing these plants in the right order, at the right doses, in the right sequence. And if this is your first time here, consider subscribing before we begin. This channel exists for exactly the person you are, someone who suspects there is more to healing than what the standard system has offered them. You are right. Let us begin. The first plant in this conversation has a name most people in the Western world only know from one story. The story of 3 men carrying gifts to a manger in Bethlehem, Frankincense, or, as the healers who used it as medicine for 3,000 years called it, Boswellia. For more than 3 millennia, the resin of the Boswellia serrata tree was harvested by hand across the dry forests of India, the Arabian Peninsula, and East Africa. The physicians of Ayurveda, India's ancient medical system, documented in texts called the Charaka Samhita and the Sushruta Samhita, used this resin specifically for what they called amavata, a condition involving pain, stiffness, and swelling in the joints. They prepared it as a paste, as a decoction, as a component in complex herbal formulas. They considered it one of the most important anti-inflammatory substances in the entire pharmacopoeia. Across the Arabian Sea, Persian physicians of the medieval Islamic Golden Age, scholars like Ibn Sina, whose medical encyclopedia was used in European universities for 6 centuries, independently documented frankincense resin as a treatment for joint conditions. So what is actually happening in your knee when Boswellia goes to work? Imagine your joint lining as a thin, delicate membrane, like the inside of a water balloon. In healthy joints, this membrane produces fluid that lubricates and nourishes cartilage. But when chronic inflammation is present, that membrane becomes the source of the problem. It begins producing enzymes, particularly one called 5-LOX, part of the leukotriene pathway, that actively break down cartilage tissue. Every day that inflammation continues, those enzymes are doing quiet, cumulative damage to the very tissue that protects your bones. The active compounds in Boswellia, called boswellic acids, particularly AKBA, have been shown to directly inhibit that 5-LOX enzyme. Not broadly, not systemically, at exactly that specific point in the inflammatory cascade. It is like finding the exact valve that is flooding a room and turning it off, instead of mopping the floor every day. A double-blind, randomized clinical trial, published in the journal Phytomedicine, followed patients with osteoarthritis of the knee who received Boswellia extract for 8 weeks. All patients reported significant reduction in knee pain and improved knee flexion compared to placebo. A 2011 study in the International Journal of Medical Sciences using a Boswellia extract called aflapin found statistically significant reduction in pain scores after just 30 days. Clinical research suggests that Boswellia works through a mechanism distinct from standard NSAIDs, which means it does not carry the same risk of gastrointestinal damage associated with long-term ibuprofen use. For use, look for a Boswellia serrata extract standardized to a minimum of 30% boswellic acids, with AKBA specifically listed on the label. A typical effective dose is between 300 and 500 milligrams, taken twice daily with food. Results are not immediate. Most clinical studies show meaningful change between 4 and 8 weeks. If you are taking blood-thinning medication, speak with your physician first. I have linked to the specific form I recommend in the description below. Boswellia works at the level of inflammation and enzyme activity. But there is another substance, one that has traveled in spice baskets along the Silk Road for more than 4,000 years, that addresses a completely different and equally important part of this picture, one that modern science has now examined in over 3,000 published papers, and one that most people are taking in a form that makes it almost entirely useless. If you have ever stood in a kitchen in India, visited a traditional Chinese medicine clinic, or walked through a medieval Arab marketplace, you have encountered this plant. Turmeric. And the way most people take it renders it almost entirely ineffective. In the Ayurvedic tradition, turmeric, called haridra in Sanskrit, has been documented for over 4,000 years. Ancient texts describe it as a treatment for joint swelling, stiffness, and pain. It was not considered a spice that happened to have medicinal properties. It was considered medicine that happened to taste good. Chinese physicians of the Tang dynasty documented it in the 7th century under the name jianghuang, using it for what they described as blood stagnation in the joints. A classical Chinese way of describing what we would now recognize as inflammatory joint disease. Inside your body right now, there is a molecular switch called NFKB, nuclear factor kappa B. Think of it as the master control panel for inflammation. When it is activated, it turns on dozens of inflammatory genes simultaneously. In people with chronic joint conditions, this switch is stuck in the on position. Curcumin, the active compound in turmeric, has been shown to directly suppress NFKB signaling. It also inhibits COX2 enzymes, the same enzymes targeted by prescription anti-inflammatory drugs like celecoxib, but without the cardiovascular risk profile those drugs carry. A 2016 systematic review published in the Journal of Medicinal Food, analyzing multiple randomized controlled trials, found that curcumin supplementation produced clinically meaningful reductions in joint pain and physical function scores in patients with osteoarthritis. A study published in Trials in 2014 compared curcumin directly to ibuprofen for knee osteoarthritis and found comparable pain relief with significantly better gastrointestinal tolerance. Clinical research suggests that the critical variable is bioavailability. Standard turmeric powder absorbs poorly. The studies that show results use enhanced preparations. For use, you need a curcumin extract, not raw turmeric powder, standardized to at least 95% curcuminoids in a form that addresses the bioavailability problem. Look for formulas that include piperine, black pepper extract, which has been shown to enhance absorption by up to 2,000%, or liposomal and phospholipid complexed forms like Mariva or BCM95. The dose used in most effective clinical trials is 500 to 1,000 milligrams of curcumin extract, taken twice daily with a meal that contains healthy fat. Do not take high-dose curcumin if you have gallstones. I have linked to the specific form I recommend in the description below. Boswellia and turmeric are the two most thoroughly documented plants in this category. But the next plant comes from a completely different part of the world, used by healers who had never heard of India or China, and it works through yet another distinct mechanism, a plant with claws, and a story that begins in the Kalahari Desert. In the Kalahari region of southern Africa, the indigenous San people and the Khoikhoi people used the tuberous roots of a creeping desert plant to address pain and inflammation long before any Western botanist ever set foot on that continent. The plant is called Harpagophytum procumbens. In the 20th century, a German farmer observed its use, brought samples back to Europe, and by the 1950s, German pharmacologists were actively studying it. They gave it the name most people know it by today, devil's claw, for the hooked appendages on its fruit. The healers of southern Africa used it for joint pain, for lower back pain, and for what they described as stiffness of movement. When European herbalists and physicians began studying it independently, they arrived at exactly the same applications. Your cartilage is not static tissue. It is constantly being broken down and rebuilt. At least, it should be. The problem in cartilage degeneration is that the breakdown accelerates while the rebuilding slows. One of the key drivers of that breakdown is a class of enzymes called matrix metalloproteinases, MMPs. These enzymes degrade collagen and proteoglycans, the structural proteins that give cartilage its cushioning properties. Think of cartilage like a waterlogged sponge held together by a network of protein fibers. MMPs are the scissors cutting those fibers. Devil's claw contains iridoid glycosides, primarily harpagoside, that have been shown to inhibit those scissors. A clinical trial published in Phytomedicine demonstrated that devil's claw extract was as effective as the pharmaceutical drug diaspirin for hip and knee osteoarthritis, with fewer side effects. Clinical research suggests that the primary active compound, harpagoside, needs to be present at standardized levels to produce consistent results. For use, look for devil's claw extract standardized to a minimum of 2.5% harpagoside, or 50 to 100 milligrams of harpagoside per daily dose. The typical effective dose is between 600 and 1200 milligrams of extract per day, divided into 2 doses with meals. Do not use devil's claw if you have peptic ulcers or are taking blood-thinning medication. I have linked to the specific form I recommend in the description below. Devil's claw brings us from Africa to Europe, and to a plant so common, so familiar, that most people consider it a garden nuisance, a weed. The ancient Romans used it as medicine, and they were right. Stinging nettle, Urtica dioica. A plant most people's first memory of involves an accidental brush against it on a hiking trail and an immediate burning rash. Roman physicians documented its use for painful, swollen joints. Medieval European herbalists, from Hildegard von Bingen to the English herbalist Nicholas Culpeper, prescribed it continuously for gout, joint pain, and swelling. Inside your joints, a specific inflammatory molecule called TNF-alpha plays a central role in cartilage destruction, and it signals the body to produce less collagen. Nettle leaf contains a group of biologically active compounds, lectins, caffeic acid, and quercetin among them, that have been shown to inhibit TNF-alpha and NF-κB activity simultaneously. There is also evidence that nettle leaf acts as a natural COX-1 and COX-2 inhibitor, covering a different part of the inflammatory spectrum than Boswellia alone. A study published in the Journal of the Royal Society of Medicine found that topical application of nettle leaf to arthritic joints significantly reduced pain scores compared to a control. Clinical research suggests that both topical and internal use produce measurable effects on inflammatory markers. For use, dried nettle leaf tea, 1 to 2 teaspoons of dried leaf per cup, steeped for 10 minutes, 2 to 3 cups per day, is a traditional and effective preparation. In supplement form, look for freeze-dried nettle leaf capsules at 300 to 500 milligrams, taken twice daily. Nettle is considered very safe at food-level doses, but may have a mild diuretic effect. Those on blood pressure medication should use it with some awareness. I have linked to the specific form I recommend in the description below. We have traveled from India to Arabia, from Africa to Rome. Now we go back to China and India, to a root that has been sitting on kitchen shelves for centuries while researchers spent millions of dollars looking for the answer it already contained. Ginger, Zingiber officinale. So embedded in daily cooking and culture that it barely registers as medicine anymore. That forgetting may be one of the more significant losses in the history of herbalism. Chinese physicians in the Han Dynasty, more than 2,000 years ago, classified it as a warming medicine that moved and cleared stagnation in the joints. Ayurvedic physicians called it Vishwa Bhesaj, the universal medicine, and applied it specifically to conditions involving joint pain and stiffness. Ginger contains a family of bioactive compounds called gingerols and their heat-converted derivatives, shogols. These compounds act on multiple inflammatory pathways simultaneously, inhibiting both COX and LOX enzymes, reducing prostaglandin synthesis, suppressing the production of pro-inflammatory cytokines. Think of inflammation in your joints like a fire fed by multiple gas lines. Most anti-inflammatory drugs shut off one line. Ginger compounds have been shown to address several at once, which may be why traditional healers used it as a broad-spectrum anti-inflammatory for so many different conditions across so many different cultures. A randomized, double-blind trial published in Arthritis and Rheumatism involving 247 patients with knee osteoarthritis found that ginger extract significantly reduced knee pain on standing and after walking compared to placebo. A 2015 meta-analysis of 5 clinical trials confirmed a statistically significant effect of ginger supplementation on pain and disability in osteoarthritis. Clinical research suggests that highly concentrated ginger extract is more consistently effective than raw ginger powder due to higher concentrations of active shogols. For use, fresh ginger tea made from 2 to 3 centimeters of fresh root, sliced and simmered in water for 15 minutes, is a traditional daily practice. For therapeutic effect, a standardized ginger extract at 250 to 500 milligrams, taken 2 to 3 times daily with food, matches what clinical studies have used. Ginger may enhance the effect of blood-thinning medications at high doses. Use with awareness if that applies to you. I have linked to the specific form I recommend in the description below. We are halfway through our list, and before we continue, if you have been finding this valuable, please take a moment to like this video. It genuinely helps this information reach more people who need it. And if you have not subscribed yet, this is the channel that continues this kind of research week after week, plant by plant. Now, let us cross an ocean, because the next plant on this list comes from a tradition that Western medicine did not even know existed until the 20th century. Deep in the Amazon rainforest, in what is now Peru and the surrounding regions, the indigenous peoples of the Inca civilization and the forest communities that preceded them used the inner bark of a woody vine as one of their most important medicines. The vine is Uncaria tomentosa. They called it una de gato, cat's claw, for the curved claw-like thorns that grow along its stems. Healers used it for joint inflammation, for pain, and for what they described as conditions of the bones. Inside your joints, your immune system is part of the problem. Inflammatory cells, macrophages, T cells, infiltrate joint tissue and produce the cytokines and enzymes that destroy cartilage. Cat's claw contains pentacyclic oxindole alkaloids, POAs, that have been shown to modulate immune activity, reducing the hyperactivation that drives joint destruction without suppressing normal immune function. A randomized, double-blind trial published in the Journal of Rheumatology found that cat's claw extract significantly reduced joint pain in patients with rheumatoid arthritis, with a response rate over 50% after just 4 weeks. A study specific to knee osteoarthritis, published in Inflammation Research, found that cat's claw extract reduced pain during activity and at rest, as well as medical assessments of knee condition compared to placebo. Clinical research suggests the benefit is specifically tied to the oxindole alkaloid content, which varies significantly between preparations. For use, look for cat's claw inner bark extract standardized to at least 3% total alkaloids, with pentacyclic oxindole alkaloids specifically listed on the label. A typical dose is 300 to 500 milligrams, taken twice daily with food. Cat's claw is not recommended during pregnancy or for those on immunosuppressant medications. I have linked to the specific form I recommend in the description below. From the Amazon, we travel back across the Atlantic to one of the oldest documented medicinal plants in human history, a plant that literally gave the world aspirin, and a story of how a 4,000-year-old remedy was transformed into a pharmaceutical product that in some important ways lost the benefits its original form provided. Willow bark, Salix alba. The use of willow bark for pain is so ancient and so widespread that it appears in 4 entirely separate ancient medical traditions, with essentially no possibility of cross-contamination. The Ebers Papyrus, the same Egyptian document that mentioned ginger, lists willow bark as a treatment for pain and fever. The ancient Greek physician Dioscorides documented it in the 1st century. Traditional Chinese medicine used it under the name Liu Bai Pi for over 2,000 years, and Native American healers across multiple tribes independently used willow bark for joint pain and fever. Here is what was lost in that conversion. Willow bark contains not only salicin, but a complex of flavonoids, polyphenols, and tannins that work synergistically with it. These compounds provide anti-inflammatory and antioxidant effects that isolated aspirin does not replicate. Salicin itself is gentler on the stomach lining than aspirin because it is only converted to salicylic acid after absorption in the intestine, meaning it does not damage the stomach wall the way aspirin does. Think of it like the difference between eating an orange and swallowing a vitamin C tablet. The orange contains fiber, flavonoids, and cofactors that change how everything is absorbed and used. The isolated molecule is not the same as the whole plant. A randomized trial published in the American Journal of Medicine found that willow bark extract produced significant pain relief in patients with joint pain, comparable to conventional anti-inflammatory medication, with superior gastrointestinal tolerability. A review published in Rheumatology confirmed the analgesic and anti-inflammatory effect of standardized willow bark. Clinical research suggests that the full-spectrum extract is more effective than salicin alone, validating the traditional use of the whole plant. For use, look for willow bark extract standardized to 15% salicin. The typical effective dose is 240 milligrams of extract daily, divided into 2 doses. Because it contains salicylates, do not use willow bark if you are allergic to aspirin, if you have kidney disease, or if you are taking blood-thinning medications. Do not give it to children. I have linked to the specific form I recommend in the description below. The next one may surprise you, because it does not work on your knee directly. It works on the internal environment that determines whether your knee can heal at all. Ashwagandha, Withania somnifera. The name in Sanskrit translates roughly as the smell of horse, a reference both to its distinctive aroma and to the strength and vitality it was believed to confer. In the Ayurvedic tradition, it is classified as a rasayana, a class of herbs used specifically for rejuvenation, strengthening, and the restoration of vitality. Ancient Ayurvedic physicians used it for joint pain and stiffness, but specifically in cases where they observed that fatigue, stress, and weakness of constitution seemed to worsen joint conditions. Here is what makes ashwagandha distinct from every other plant on this list. Most of the others work at the level of inflammation, inhibiting enzymes, suppressing cytokines, reducing swelling. Ashwagandha works upstream of all of that. It is classified as an adaptogen, a substance that modulates the body's stress response system. When cortisol, your primary stress hormone, is chronically elevated, it actively suppresses the body's ability to repair tissue, including cartilage. Chronically elevated cortisol also drives systemic inflammation. Ashwagandha's withanolide compounds have been shown to lower cortisol levels, improve sleep quality, and reduce the systemic inflammatory burden that makes local joint healing harder to achieve. It is addressing the internal environment in which healing either happens or does not. A randomized, double-blind, placebo-controlled study published in the Journal of the International Society of Sports Nutrition found that KSM-66 ashwagandha extract significantly reduced joint pain and improved function in adults with mild to moderate knee discomfort over 12 weeks. A 2019 study published in Medicine confirmed significant reductions in pain scores and physical function impairment with a standardized ashwagandha extract. Clinical research suggests that the anti-arthritic effect is both direct, through COX inhibition, and systemic, through cortisol modulation and reduced inflammatory load. For use, look for ashwagandha root extract, standardized to at least 5% withanolides. Products listed as KSM-66 or Sensoril are among the most rigorously studied forms. The typical dose is 300 to 600 milligrams, taken once or twice daily with food. Ashwagandha is generally very well tolerated, but is not recommended during pregnancy. Some people notice a mild calming effect and prefer to take it in the evening. I have linked to the specific form I recommend in the description below. And now, the 9th plant. The most dramatic story on this entire list, a plant from China that has been used for over 2,000 years, that produced results in Western clinical trials compelling enough to compare it directly to pharmaceutical drugs, and that remains largely unknown outside of specialized research circles. The ancient healers called it Lei Gong Teng, thunder god vine. In traditional Chinese medicine, Tripterigium wilfordii, thunder god vine, has been used for over 2,000 years for conditions involving joint inflammation, pain, and swelling. Ancient practitioners used the root peel specifically, preparing it as a decoction or extract for what classical Chinese medicine described as Bi syndrome, obstruction of the channels leading to pain, numbness, and stiffness in the joints and limbs. The texts are specific. This was not a general tonic. This was a targeted medicine for joint conditions. Thunder god vine contains a compound called triptolide, along with celastrol and a class of compounds called triepoxide diterpenes. These compounds have been shown to suppress the production of inflammatory cytokines, including TNF-alpha, IL-1 beta, and IL-6 at the gene expression level. They also suppress the NF-κB pathway. What makes thunder god vine distinctive is the depth of this suppression. The compounds affect the very genes that code for inflammatory proteins, not just the proteins themselves. A study published in the Annals of the Rheumatic Diseases, a leading rheumatology journal, found that thunder god vine extract performed comparably to the pharmaceutical drug sulfasalazine in patients with rheumatoid arthritis, reducing joint swelling, tenderness, and inflammatory markers. Research published in the Journal of Ethnopharmacology confirmed significant anti-inflammatory and cartilage protective effects across multiple models. Clinical research suggests the extract shows particular promise for inflammatory joint conditions. But it comes with an important caveat, and I want to be direct about this. Thunder god vine is a potent plant. It must be used with respect and precision. The root peel extract is the part used medicinally. The leaves, flowers, and outer bark contain different compounds that are significantly more toxic. Only use commercial extracts that explicitly state they are prepared from root peel. The therapeutic range studied in clinical trials is typically 30 to 60 milligrams of standardized extract per day. Thunder god vine is not appropriate for pregnant women. It has demonstrated effects on fertility and hormonal function. It can also interact with immunosuppressant medications. Given its potency, this is the one plant on this list where I would most strongly recommend consulting with a knowledgeable physician before beginning. I have linked to the specific verified form I recommend and to a resource explaining safe use in more detail in the description below. Thunder god vine brings us to the end of our 9 plants. But knowing 9 plants and using them wisely are 2 entirely different things. Let me give you a framework. The temptation, after learning about 9 powerful plants, is to go out and buy all 9 at once. Please do not do this. Not because it is dangerous. Most of these plants are very safe, but because you will have no way of knowing which ones are working, and you will overwhelm your system's ability to respond to any of them with clarity. Here is how to begin. In the first week, introduce 2 plants, Boswellia and ginger. These are the best documented, the most universally safe, and they work on different but complementary mechanisms. Take them with food. Give your body 7 days to begin responding. Keep a simple pain journal. Morning stiffness, pain on standing, pain after a 10-minute walk. Just a number from 1 to 10, twice a day. You need a baseline. In the second week, add turmeric in its bioavailable form and stinging nettle. Your foundational anti-inflammatory system is now running on 4 inputs. You may begin to notice changes in your morning stiffness first. That is typically the earliest indicator. In the third week, introduce devil's claw and willow bark. You now have a system that addresses multiple inflammatory pathways, enzyme activity, and structural protection simultaneously. Continue your journal. Look not just at pain scores, but at range of motion. Can you bend your knee a little further? Are you reaching for the wall on the stairs less often? In the fourth week and beyond, consider adding ashwagandha, particularly if stress is a significant factor in your life, or if your sleep is poor. Cat's claw can be added at this point as well. Thunder god vine should come last, if at all, and ideally with professional guidance. Give this system 12 weeks before making a final judgment. Not 4 weeks, not 8, 12. Cartilage is slow tissue. It does not have a direct blood supply. It receives its nutrition through the compression and decompression of movement from the synovial fluid around it. Change at this level is real, but it is measured in months, not days. Your body does not change overnight, but it does change. Ancient healers measured results in seasons, not days. Give these plants the same respect. You came to this video because you were tired of being told that what you are feeling is simply the price of aging, that your cartilage is gone, and that is that the best you can expect is management, a tablet that blunts the pain enough to get through the day until the day the surgeon says you are ready. I want you to sit with a different possibility for a moment. The ancient Indian physician who wrote about Boswellia for joint conditions 3,000 years ago was not treating a disease of old age. He was treating a disruption in the body's own inflammatory regulation, a disruption that, with the right plant compounds at the right doses, could be addressed. He believed the body retained the capacity to regulate itself. He believed in intervening not with a chemical sledgehammer, but with substances that spoke the same molecular language the body already speaks. Your knee pain is not a character flaw. It is not the inevitable result of living a long, active life. It is a specific set of biological events: inflammation, enzyme activity, cartilage stress, hormonal imbalance, altered joint mechanics, that have names, that have mechanisms, and that the plants discussed today have been shown to address through those exact mechanisms. The healers of India, Egypt, China, Rome, Persia, the Amazon, and the Kalahari were not guessing. They were observing, across thousands of patients and hundreds of generations, what worked. They were accumulating clinical experience on a timescale no modern study has ever matched. And when their knowledge was set aside, not because it failed, but because it could not be monetized, what was lost was not gone. It was only stored in old texts, in surviving traditions, and in the seeds and roots and resins that kept growing long after the healers who understood them had passed. You now carry some of that knowledge. Use it carefully, use it patiently, and share it with someone else who needs it. The healing was never lost. It was only forgotten. If this video brought you value, please leave a comment below. Tell me which plant surprised you most, or share what you have already tried. Your experience matters to this community, and it helps others who are watching and wondering. If you have not subscribed yet, please do. This channel will continue bringing you the knowledge that ancient civilizations accumulated and modern systems set aside. Like this video if it earned it, and I will see you in the next one.